Well, hey everybody, welcome. Whitney is running late and wasn't gonna sure if she's really gonna be able to hop on. The life of funeral directors. I'm lucky that I haven't run into people getting delayed too often. But I'm Kari the Mortician. Today we were going to talk about transitioning from kind of one career into the other, and we'll still talk about that and then answer any questions you have. So if you have a question about being a mortician, being a funeral director, shoot it to me, please, and drop it in the comments so I can answer it for you. Go live for about 45 minutes or so and answering questions. I am a funeral director in Michigan, licensed here for almost 23 years. And April will be 23 years, which is bananas. Like, I remember when I was young thinking, oh my gosh, if I do something for 5 years in a career, that's going to be so long. So now, having been licensed for 23 years, it's just crazy train. So let me talk a little about transitioning into this industry from a different one. And what I have found, which is fascinating, is the two people that I most hear, hey, I'm going to move into funeral directing from my current career, is cosmetology and nursing. And the two things that I hear morticians kind of rotate out to is cosmetology and nursing. And so it's kind of interesting that it works that way. And so, I always say this is a great later in life career. So many people go to school for this when they are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, because maybe it wasn't the right thing when they were younger. But I also think a huge difference is that gender-wise, this has changed as a business, and it is now very female dominant, where before it was a little harder, I think, as a female to feel comfortable or get an opening. And so now there's far more women later in their life going back to school. Kids have grown, going back to school to be a funeral director. And I also say and tell you guys about how many roles there are within the funeral home that are not something you have to go to mortuary school for. You can still work within the funeral home and do just as big of things. Like in Michigan, the only thing you really have to be licensed for is embalming and overseeing the final funeral if the body is present. If it's a memorial service, you don't have to be licensed. Making arrangements, you don't have to be licensed. So you can be an arranger without going to mortuary school. You can work memorial services. You can write pre-need if it's a trust. If it's a insurance, you have to be licensed to do insurance. But there's all these different aftercare, graphics, all these different things. And so you can work at a funeral home without investing in the 3 to 4 years, doing an apprenticeship, all of that. A lot of openings for you. But transitioning over, Whitney had been a cosmetologist and had interest in the business. And she humbles me so much because she talks to me about how she does it because watching my videos and stuff kind of led her down the path, which is crazy to me. It's crazy to me that I have literally any influence over anybody. It's just crazy to me. So I'm humbled by that, but it's also become such a great conversation we can have about going to mortuary school and about being a mortician and all the variety within the business. I was just talking to someone the other day when I was recording a podcast about how it doesn't look the same at every funeral home. If you have a large funeral home, you may just work as an arranger or just go out on services or just work in the care center. At a smaller funeral home, you're going to do more. Yeah, you may mow the yard and you may snow blow and you may shovel and you may be the one vacuuming more often. It's all out of necessity how that funeral home is set up. So it's just a little different everywhere. But, as a cosmetologist, you could also get a great position coming in and just doing the cosmetics and the hair. It does take a little bit of time. Cosmetology school doesn't teach you how to do deceased person hair and makeup. It is different. Dead skin, not the same as living skin. Doing makeup with just eyes closed that are never going to open, not the same. Like my makeup would be far too much if I was in a casket. You would do much less. The heavier eyeshadow is too much when the eyes are closed. So it's learning how to do things differently, sometimes using different cosmetics, more so just highlighting and bringing a face back to kind of a little life, so to speak. And then hair, we got gravity. Like hair goes back when you tip your head back. Keeping this bang here, if you want to call this a bang, it's going to take work when they're laying backwards because it wants to go back too. So you learn all those things when you're in the business working. You don't learn them in cosmetology school. I never went to cosmetology school, and I've cut a lot of head of hair. I've done a lot of cute little old lady hairdos. So it's a hands-on thing, but back in the day or certain funeral homes, you can come in and spend, 20 minutes, do hair and get $50, and it's not a terrible gig. So that is a connector that you can do as a cosmetologist wanting to kind of get in the death care, is go visit all the funeral homes and make sure they understand that you're available and want to help and want to come in and do hair and want to be there for their clients. It's a great thing. So I'm sorry that Whittnie wasn't able to join us today, but we're still going to have a little chat and still talk over things. So if you have a question about the business, please drop the question and I am happy to answer it. So yeah, what questions do you guys have? This week I'm going to talk, share with you guys. This has been a week. At one point, Josh was like, honey, I'm a little worried about you. And I'm like, well, I'm kind of worried about me too. Very mentally exhausting, very emotional, just because I felt taxed, not because of the families I was working with and such, but definitely hit my limits this week with some things and with my energy, and just exhausted, just very, very exhausted. I was embalming yesterday and was kind of thankful to be in a room with no living people, because there's just weeks you get peopled out, and having to be full of energy and give energy and have your mind really sharp and answering questions and doing a lot, where in the prep room you can just, I feel like it's a different challenge all on its own, but it's quiet and it's just you and the deceased, and it's just peaceful. Sometimes it's like standing. It's the only equivalent I can say is, so I took Ed out the other night in the middle of the night, and we had like a huge snowstorm during the day. It wasn't snowing anymore. There was no wind. It was silent, and just standing outside, and it was just silent, and it was peaceful, and it was beautiful. Everything was covered in fresh new snow, and it was just beautiful. And it's just a quiet moment. So that to me is like the closest connection I can give to you guys on what it's like in the prep room. Is it's so peaceful in some ways. I know that seems weird, thinking about being with a dead body, as people say, and everything, but it is. It's kind of a peaceful moment, especially when you've been working with a whole lot of families. Boom, 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 boom. Do you think a therapist is needed when working in this field? I'm often asked, do I? So I think that definitely it could be helpful. I have seen therapists over the years, and I've seen some really poopy therapists. And I had one tell me, because my daughter was with me and she was sitting out in the other room while I was in there, and she'd popped in. And within that time, I told her I loved her like twice, because she was little. And she said, love you all the time. And of course I'm going to tell her back. And she told me told my child I loved her too much. I'm like, is that a thing? And like when another therapist, we sat down, I said, yeah. She said, well, what are you here for? I said, I don't know. I just kind of want to talk through and see if whatever. She goes, so who abused you when you were a child, your mom or your dad? And I was like, what? And she goes, well, somebody had to have abused you. So who? And I'm like, what? And so I've had some just really poo therapists. And so I think that definitely therapy is good, but finding the right therapist takes a lot of time and money and energy that I don't always have or want to give. It's hard. Um, my sister-in-law passed away 2 weeks ago, and she stayed at the house after she passed for about 5 hours. When she was laid out last week, her hands seemed very shriveled and like some skin peeling. So, one, was she under a bunch of warm blankets, all tucked in cozy when she was laying there? Because that creates a lot of heat, which breaks down that body really fast. And then 2, she may have been retaining some fluid. She may have dehydrated down. It's so hard to say. I can do a lot of guessing, but unless I see her, I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't know for sure what was going on. Keeping your loved one with you for a while is not a bad thing, but if you want a viewing, then it's probably good. And it sounds like she was then held for a good week or more before the viewing happened. So embalming is not magical. It is a short-term preservation for ceremonial purposes. So, depending what her cause of death, what medications, had she been on chemotherapy, that's a huge problem when it comes to embalming. So there's a lot of factors. So if you give me more information, maybe I can give more thoughts. Is that from laying there so long? Thanks, Amanda. Amanda, if she was wrapped up in a bunch of blankets, that can become problematic just because it causes heat and it quickens the decomposition because of it. As an Irish embalmer, hey, Cynthia, I have learned to do hair, makeup, and nails, and I watch a lot of tutorials if I don't know something. It comes with the experience as I go. I prefer to do it this way myself. And I've cut a lot of men's hair over the years. Yesterday, Josh is always having a hard time. You guys know my man Josh. He is a burial vault installer, crematory operator, works at the National Cemetery, and he has a very short, buzz down haircut. People are always asking him if he's military, which he is not. And he's like, I don't want that. I don't want stolen valor, but people try and give him those little coins and everything. He gets asked, do you want the military discount? Like literally all the time because of how his hair is. Look, it's hard for him to get to a barber. And it's hard to find barbers. Like they say, walk in and then he's gone and they're mean to him. And he's like, what just happened? So I was like, you know what? I can do this. So we ordered clippers. So yesterday I did I shaved down his hair with a fade up and everything. And I'm like, I need to go do some barber schooling to learn this correctly. But it looks good. I can see my little errors and where I could do better next time. It was my first time though, really. So like you're saying, Cynthia, we learn. And yeah, it's going to take a couple trial and errors. I don't want to ever err with a deceased. Like if we shave off a beard that can't be replaced, that's tricky. Or if we cut hair too short or something. I did a wig once and I went to curl the wig. Do you know what wigs are made out of? Like plastic. So not all wigs. Some wigs are real hair, but this was not. It melted a chunk of it. So I made it work. You couldn't see it in the end, but things happen when we don't know and when we're learning. And so it is good for us to learn and dive in and YouTube video the crap out of things, ask other people who have done it, learn from them. I drive past this little salon on the way to work every day when I'm driving in. And there is a big sign and it is predominantly for Black. It says locks and I can't even think of the rest of them. I just know locks is the top one. And I'm like, I need to just go in there and say, hey, can I spend a day like watching you and learn a little bit from you hands-on? I've done some classes with Joelle, who's the grave woman. She does a lot of multicultural death care classes. And I always want to know more. I always want to be growing. I always want to be learning because I want to do my best for the people that are in front of me. And especially when it comes to hair and makeup, like that's what defines the person as the person. And so if you do that wrong, I think of that My Girl movie scene where she's like the old school marm or librarian or something, and he puts like bright blue eyeshadow and lipstick on her and stuff. I love it. Hello everyone. Hey Kevin. So yeah, it can be just a challenging. She had multiple myeloma with liver. So I'm going to guess with liver failure, she had a lot of jaundice going on, possibly edema, which means she had fluid built up in her tissue. So it's like the layers of skin and you get fluid in between them. And it may not be where they're big bloated with fluid, but they definitely get fluid. So when you embalm, that embalming fluid dries that edema out. And so tissue that's been plumped for a while is going to get wrinkly as it settles down. And I'm going to guess that's why some of that wrinkly happened. Typically with liver failure, that's what happens. You get the jaundice, and she may not have gotten super jaundice where their skin gets really yellow, their eyes, all the white of your eye can get really yellow, tongue yellow, everything turns yellow. The fluid that comes out of the person is very yellow even. Just because your body is not processing the bile and everything that's going through the system. So their color changes a lot with that. Yeah, synthetic wigs. And it was a moment. I said, oh shoot. Whoops, what am I gonna do? And I worked through it. You have to. But yeah. And I forgot to say happy Valentine's Day to you guys. What are you guys doing for Valentine's? I had my Valentine. I got my little Valentines. You know, I always think that it's important. Like Josh got the girls each like a little basket of some stuff he knew they'd want. I think it's important to learn to be a girl in some ways and to give. And my girls love doing gifts just like I am to a fault, but we love giving gifts and we love doing nice things. And so it's nice to have someone do nice things for them. So it was sweet that he did that. And his son gave them a present too. And it was just sweet. But yeah, I love love. I love love, but today can be hard if you've lost your love and if you've lost your person. There's a family I met with this week. They're doing the funeral today. And, you know, to bury your loved one, that's your partner on Valentine's, is just terribly tragic and sad. Any day you have to bury your partner is tragic and sad, but definitely, I think harder on special days. We've done funeral, you know, burying moms on Mother's Day and fathers on Father's Day, or meeting with families where they died on Mother's Day, Father's Day, which is hard. I can't even imagine that because my parents are never going to die. That's just what I'm going to think. It's just hard. Yeah. What else can I tell you? So back in the day, little story, I was a new license. So this was back in 2004, 5-ish. And we had a new apprentice, and oh, she was funny and such a kind heart, and a newbie, always in the beginning. We all kind of think we know things and we know everything. And years later, she became an amazing funeral director. She was an amazing funeral director, but we all grow and we all become humble and learn a lot of life lessons, and was an amazing funeral director. And I met the love of her life and married him the last 2 years, and just saw she had died this week. And so my heart is broken for all the people. She was only with us during like her apprenticeship and shortly after. And she had been at this one funeral home, and I love this funeral home for quite some time. And so my heart's just broken for all of them. When you work in a funeral home alongside people every day, we work through a lot of big, heavy moments, a lot of big, heavy losses. We are with each other through everything that goes on outside of the funeral home: births, deaths, marriages, divorces. We're with each other through all of that and are each other's support system, because we're together so long and so many hours and everything. And so when one of your people dies, you as a funeral home staff grieve, but then you also still have to keep going to take care of the families that you're serving. That's hard. I just remember over the years stepping in and helping at funeral homes when there's been losses and allowing the staff to just be part of it and be part of the experience. We had a gentleman, hello, Scotty. He was a young man, had come work with us at the funeral home. And he was going to the police academy. He was such a godly, beautiful young boy. And he died in a car accident as a police officer. He was a new police officer and was in pursuit of a gentleman and died in a car accident. And so he died in the line of duty. And they eventually caught the guy. It was on like America's Most Wanted the next week because the person had fled, and they did eventually catch him. But so we had this funeral for Scotty, and we all worked it. And I stood there. There was hundreds of police officers at it because it was a active duty death. And I just stood there passing out folders, just tears just streaming down my face. And people looked at me. They must have thought we were crazy because a lot of people didn't realize he was part of our staff as well. And that we had this young boy, I think he was just 18, 19 when he had moved to town to go to college for being a police officer and started working at the funeral home. So we had all been these like mother hens to this boy who was there without his parents in town and stuff and going to college, gave him his shrimp ramen noodle, which he was obsessed with. And to have him gone and die, and it was just crazy. And so having to do that while being in charge of the service too was a lot, needless to say, just a lot. So, that is a hard thing, that we become the grievers and the person who experiences a loss too. And that's hard. We call that the other side of the table. And I've talked about it. I cared for my grandparents. I cared for my niece when she was murdered. It's hard to take off the funeral director hat and just be in the moment and just be in the loss and just be part of the funeral, because we're such control we're such control freak people that we typically are orchestrating all of it. So for us to just sit back is hard. I can't imagine as a funeral director losing my spouse and going through that, losing my child, going through that. It's been, extended out like my niece or my grandparents or good friends or, so it's just different in that capacity too. I mean, as a spouse, I'm not going to try and, be working the funeral. Well, heck, I might. I don't know. I am quite a control freak to this level, but it's just different being on the other side of the table. I remember reading an article from a funeral director whose son died, and that was what it was like. It was called Other Side of the Table, and, having to walk through it without being in charge of it. And I don't know. I don't know how people do it. I've had people who are funeral directors who embalmed their spouses. I don't know that I could do that at all. So it's hard. Hard. Well, what other questions? Let's do a couple last questions before I sign off. I appreciate you guys getting on. I'm sorry that Whittnie couldn't join us. Check back the beginning of this video once it's done and posted, chatting about kind of transitioning into this business. A big part of transitioning too is the credits. And if you went to school and have any credits that might transfer, that may help you. I always say shadow at a funeral home, get a job within a funeral home. So if you're moving from cosmetology into the funeral home, going in and doing hair or helping to learn how to do makeup there, it's going to be a great in for you without like fully being on staff and stuff. It's a good, like, hey, getting to pop in, getting to see the bodies, getting to get to know the staff and, kind of the behind the scenes working. And that gives you a good little feel for the business more than most people would. So that's why I say it's a natural transition from cosmetology into funeral directing because of that. So let me know your story. Pop your questions below. Email me if you want me to cover other questions in future live videos. I have a couple interviews lined up coming up. Little Miss Funeral, who was one of the OGs of the social media online funeral directors. I think back in the day, it was like Caitlin, Caleb Wild with his blog, and there was Lauren, who is Little Miss Funeral. And she was one of the originals. So now when people say like Lauren the Mortician, I'm like, who? Like, do you mean Little Miss Funeral? And they're like, no, the other Lauren. And I'm like, oh, Lauren, Little Miss Funeral is the OG there. But she has stepped away from all the social media to be a mom and to do the work. And she's got 3 kids now. And so we're going to hear a little more from her, kind of what she's doing now, where she's working now. She's still in funeral service, and just kind of catch up with her because it's been a hot minute chatting with my friend Lauren. I've got Alex Strauss, who is a New York Times ranked author who has been writing about grief and all sorts of things, who has a new book coming out, and we're going to chat about her books and kind of her path and what she's learned. She's been diving in, deep diving in, going to the NFDA convention and visiting Parting Stones and doing all this stuff to really get to know the death care business and see what she's doing now and what she's learned and what's been surprising to her. So I can't wait to chat with her. She's such an amazing person. I've met so many cool people with this platform, and that is one of my things that keeps me going, is the people that tell me they found information that's been helpful, the people I get to meet. It's just amazing. So it does keep me plugging forward and plugging along. So, well, thank you guys for joining. I appreciate you. And I can't wait to do our next live video and answer some more questions. So think of some good questions, send them over to me, Kari at KariTheMortician.com, and I will answer them in the next live video. Bye, guys.